Chris Wallace. Chris is our speaker today, and I have known Chris since 1992. I have had the privilege of working for him several times as an intern in college at Texas Tech, and then worked for him as his chief operating officer when he was the president and CEO of the Irving Las Colinas Chamber of Commerce. And you'll see that as I read his bio here and introduce him to you, you'll see that I quickly, after about 6 or 7 years, outgrew all of his wisdom. And that's why the Alito Education Foundation hired me away, because I was just so much more advanced at that point in time than anything that Chris could offer. So, Chris Wallace, IOM CCE, is President and CEO of the North Texas Commission, a unique public-private partnership that drives large, impactful projects and legislative advocacy benefiting a robust 13-county region. Prior to joining the NTC, Chris was President and CEO of the Texas Association of Business, the State Chamber of Commerce. In this role, he managed TAB's statewide team responsible for legislative advocacy and strategy, operations, marketing, membership, as well as board and chamber relations. As a registered lobbyist, Chris led TAB's advocacy initiatives in the areas of economic development, having founded the highly recognized and successful Keep Texas Open for Business Coalition. Wallace was successfully led a nationwide campaign reauthorizing the Export-Import Bank, as well as the NAFTA 2.0 initiative, the Texas-Mexico Trade Coalition. Prior to joining the TAB team, Wallace was President and CEO of the Greater Irving Las Colinas Chamber, the third largest chamber of commerce in North Texas, and the first national 5-star accredited chamber in Texas. He also managed the Irving Economic Development Partnership. He is chairman of the National Board of Trustees for the U.S. Chambers Institute for Organizational Management, as well as a former regent of Northeast Institute at Villanova University. He's among only 570 executives in the nation who have earned their CCE designation. And Lisa is one of those 570 as well. Exactly, right here. He also serves as the National Board of the Business and Industry Political Action Committee, BIPAC, and on the Texas Advisory Committee of the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. He served as Vice President of Administration for the Las Colinas Association, where he successfully developed and implemented a corporate communications and marketing program for the 12,000-acre Las Colinas development. He is a 1992 graduate of the Texas Tech University, and he is a member of the Texas Tech Chancellor's Council, and previously on the Professional Advisory Board of the College of Media and Communications, where he was named Outstanding Alumnus in 2008. He has experience in economic development, marketing, strategy planning, public relations, including management in both public and private sectors. He's played an active role in several local and state political campaigns. He's an advocate for strong civic engagement through his involvement with numerous social service, education, arts, and municipal-related boards and commissions. And in fact, he was a finalist for a 2010 White House Fellowship. So, Chris, you now have 3 minutes left to speak to us, now that I've finished that. But will you join me in welcoming Chris Wallace to the stage?
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be in East Parker County. Sean, thank you for your friendship. I'm a big fan of the Callaway family. Lisa, thank you for your leadership. I will tell you, having been involved with the U.S. Chamber and with the State Chamber, you have great leadership at this chamber, as you know, with Lisa and her entire team. So thank you. Chairman Talley, thank you, sir, for your leadership. Also happy to have my niece, Madison Wallace, here with me today as well. So again, it's so good to be with you. I want to tell you a little bit about the North Texas Commission. As Sean said, we are a regional public-private partnership representing 13 counties. And we were developed back in 1971 to develop DFW Airport. At that time, many of you who are around at that time probably remember that the city of Dallas wanted a large regional hub airport. The city of Fort Worth wanted a large regional hub airport, and the FAA and the DOT asked the leaders to be within the region at that time to come back to North Texas to look at a central airport that would serve the entire region, and they've indeed formed the North Texas Commission to accomplish that task. And that's what the NTC did during those couple of decades there. Today, the airport is very successful. We help them in terms of some marketing. We help them on federal and state advocacy, but they are a city, a huge entity within itself. But to us, they truly are, for the 13 counties in which we serve, They are the economic engine for the entire North Texas region. So it is very, very important that we keep DFW Airport strong. Let me just give you a few facts about DFW that you may not be aware of. It is an economic engine of $37 billion per year. 24-hour operations, no slot constraints, and that's very important for those who travel, particularly internationally. When you travel to Mexico City or other areas, and you can't take off from the airport in which you're flying out of, or you continue to circle around an airport because of slot constraints. No slot constraints here at DFW Airport. 7 runways. No curfew, so 24/7 operations, 5 terminals, 165 gates. 185,000 passengers pass through DFW Airport per day. Per day. That's 2 Super Bowls, by the way. 55% of the $37 billion that I mentioned of annual economic impact is from cargo. I just learned that from their CEO recently. I figured it would be just the opposite, passenger traffic versus cargo, but it's actually more in terms of cargo traffic. So moving our goods, our inventory throughout the entire world, a lot of it passes through the Freeport zone at DFW Airport. Number 1 in domestic destinations with 182 sites, and number 9 in international destinations with 125 destinations. So we must keep DFW Airport strong. It is truly a regional resource for us. We are a public-private partnership, as I mentioned. 60% of what we do is from the private sector. So our stakeholders are the largest employers within the 13 counties. We're very happy to have them at the table with us. And then 40% represent the public sector. So the cities, the 13 counties, universities, and community college districts. And of course, we work closely with our local Chamber of Commerce friends and partners. About 8 to 9 months ago, our board of directors, made up of leaders from the public and private sector, came together and formed a long-term strategic plan for our organization. And it basically consists of 3 different pillars. One is our unique ability to convene. And we did that obviously starting back in 1971, when we brought people together to develop the airport. Several years later, we were fighting the legislature to make sure we had dollars for funding reservoirs all across the North Texas region. We're seeing some of that come to fruition today. We spent the last couple of sessions on the importance of an integrated transportation system network, which I want to talk to you about, particularly tollways and managed lanes, to make sure that people have the choice in which they travel all around the entire region. Several years ago, we helped bring the Super Bowl. We were the secretariat, did all the A&O for the Super Bowl. So it has to be large, impactful projects that benefit the entire 13-county region. The second pillar in which we are really focused on is our ability to help educate and to be the collector of a lot of data for the region. This helps economic development entities to recruit businesses to our region. So it's fellow jobs for fellow North Texans. And we want to make sure that we are a collector of that data. So we pull a lot of data. It may be on population, it may be on forecasting, it may be an economic impact study on what Texas looks like under a certain type of regulation or North Texas that we need to advocate for in Austin or in DC. So we are a collector of data. And then the final pillar, which is our number 1 priority at this time, is our ability to advocate, or to be lobbyists, to advocate on behalf of business and the pro-local control issues that we face in Austin, and even federal issues as well. So you will see the NTC lead more for the region on the federal level. Believe it or not, there's not one entity across 13 counties that's really tracking and really looking at federal pieces of legislation that impact our 13 counties. The Council of Governments welcomes that because they obviously do not lobby, but we can lobby, and we will begin to assume to take that role to lead the region's federal agenda with our 36 House members who represent Texas and Senator Cornyn and Cruz obviously as well. Let me give you some, if I can have the next slide, let me give you some, just a little flavor of kind of where we're going in terms of growth for the region on that educate pillar. When we were formed in 71, our population throughout the 13 counties was 2.1 million people, believe it or not. So in more than 40 years, we've grown by more than 5 million people, 5 million people. That's more than today's population of the 29 of our 50 states, believe it or not. So if you just take this chart right here, the growth of the 14 largest cities throughout North Texas, just look across each row there and you'll actually see some pretty incredible population growth of many of the 14th largest cities throughout our entire region. If I can have the next slide, if you will. So of the 13 counties, we have 150 municipalities, 9,000 square miles, 7.4 million people. Now, projections have us reaching 7.8 million people by the year 2020. 7.8 by 2020, 10 million by 2030. They predict 12.9 million by 2040, and believe it or not, 16.7 million by 2050. So the entire state will double its population by the year 2050. We're going to beat the state by several years of doubling our size within our 13 counties, no different right here in Parker County. So this entire region of the Dallas-Fort Worth MSA is the fastest growing metropolitan region in the entire country. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we keep up with that population growth in terms of infrastructure, transportation, water, education, a talented, skilled workforce that's ready to take the jobs of the future of all of our businesses within this room. And so we stand ready at the Commission to provide the data and the lobby support needed to make that happen. Another instrument that we use to help market the region, there's several copies out front as you leave, is what we call the NTX magazine. It's also in electronic form. It's updated on a weekly basis. It's primarily published for the lens of an economic development decision maker outside of the state. Even some part of it's outside of the country. So investors who are looking at investing in the region, businesses who are looking at moving to the region, this is a great publication for them. A lot of economic development entities use this information. So that's out front, as well as our regional profile information of many of the profile points that we want to talk about as assets of the region. We also, there might be a few graduates in here of our Leadership North Texas class. It's in its 10th year this year. We also have a millennial version of that, Leadership North Texas University, that is for primarily millennials, that's in its 5th year. And the reason why these are important is because these are this is a great pool of potential elected officials. And I know we have 3 mayors, several judges in the room. Thank you for your great leadership. The LNT alumni are great pools of people that we are taking through what we call a Candidate Education Academy. And we are, in fact, training those people to run for school board, to run for city council, to run for state rep or state senator, to run for a county commissioner or even a federal member of Congress seat. And so we are training those officials in terms of ethics, training them in terms of pro-business issues, pro-local control issues. So nurturing our pool of future elected officials throughout the entire region. And finally, what I really want to discuss today, and where we need your help, and that is to our ability to advocate. We have a challenging session in the 86th session ahead of us. Probably one of the most that we are going to see in our history. We saw probably one of the toughest legislative sessions in the last session in Austin, the 85th session that we have in a long, long time. Ironically, if you even look at the 84th session, we had a new governor, new lieutenant governor, same speaker, thankfully, and we had one of the best sessions from a business outcome that we've had in a long, long time in our state's history. But the 85th is one of the most challenging, and we predict the 86th will be as well. So that's why we have 6 lobbyists working on your behalf at the North Texas Commission on the state and federal agenda to make sure that we are really pushing our agenda. It is not only pieces of legislation, but it's also board appointments, gubernatorial appointments. If you look at our region of 13 counties compared to Harris County, compared to Travis County, and we are short on number of people applying and number of people who are actually granted a gubernatorial or statewide board or commission. And that's very important for allocation of funds from the state to our entire region. So we've got to do a better job of engaging our businesses, and that's what we are here to do, and working closely with our chambers of commerce, just like we do here at the East Parker County Chamber. Last January, we launched the North Texas Advocacy Coalition. This was in response to the many challenges that the larger employer cities, counties faced in the last session of the legislature. And first, foremost in this coalition was to look at the common denominator and look at who was voting, who was not voting, and how we need to do a better job of getting people out to vote. And it worked. It worked, thankfully. I call it the E to E, employer to employee communications. And these tools that we disseminated to a lot of larger to mid-sized employees, even a lot of small businesses as well. Cities use them, counties use them. They are educating their constituencies, their employees, and even their family members, fellow churchgoers, neighborhood association colleagues, etc., on the importance of voting. And it's tools that will tell them when to go vote by the deadline. This time it was October the 9th. After they register to vote, it tells them where to go vote and when in terms of timeline to vote. And there's even a few links to give them directions on how to vote if you would like to give that to them as well. Some employers don't feel comfortable with that, and that's okay. But there's scorecards. There's scorecards, and we do our own scorecard on how state legislators voted on issues that impact the various jobs and industries within, for instance, this particular room. There's also candidate questionnaires of those who are running to challenge the sitting legislator on how they would respond to a piece of legislation on a questionnaire. So you have more than enough information to cast an educated vote in terms of with the upcoming election. Now, we as a state registered around 15.4 million people. That's a record. That's a record for our state. That was a major increase just within the region. Now, in the next 7 to 8 days, we're going to have the final numbers within our region on how do we do. I will tell you from the primary, we were about 400,000 up for the region in terms of the March primary. I think we're going to be even more than that for the midterm election, just based on number of voters that we predict that actually turned out for the entire region. There were just about 8.4 million turned out statewide. So I think we're going to see a lot of that for our share in what occurred in the midterms. Actually, when you look at employers, and we have many in the room, nationwide surveys, at least the last 4 to 5 years, have shown that employees are 65% more likely to vote if they get the information from their employer. Now that is turned. It used to be a party affiliation. It used to be the media. Today it is from your employer. You trust your employer in terms of if you, whether it's Dennis Canales at Acme Brick, whether it's the folks at Lockheed Martin, whether it's the good folks at BNSF and others, if they send out, and many of them do, an email from their top leadership to say, it's important for you to exercise your right and go vote, to be civically engaged. Maybe not how to vote, but when to go vote. And this E to E tool is really working. So I want to thank the East Parker County Chamber, all the chambers around the entire region really work together, probably more than we ever have before, on the importance of get out the vote. See if we can go back, see if we can play that video in the right-hand corner, just to give you a little sample of the tool. Can you play that video? No, that's okay. So you can log on to our website. There's some great video tools on there. I know it's kind of out of date now because the election's over, but it gives you a little tool of what we'll be doing for the next election, so you can be prepared to share many of these with your employees. Let me get into a little bit of, we have the next slide. I want to get into a little bit of the issues that we're dealing with and perhaps where we need your help. We are putting together a coalition like the region has really never seen. Private sector leaders and public sector leaders to address the issues that you see on the screen here. First and foremost is infrastructure. With some of the population figures that I gave you, we must stay ahead of the infrastructure. Now, thankfully, and Sean told me you had Michael Morris here from COG to speak. He's the king of transportation, really well known throughout the entire country. He will tell you, as I'm sure he did, that we have an integrated transportation system of choice. An integrated transportation system of choice right here in North Texas. Having lived in Austin for 5 years and spent some time in Houston, San Antonio, I will tell you that we move in North Texas. We have different ways to get from point A to point B. Now, I know we have challenges right here in this particular part of the region, but as a region as a whole, we have various alternative forms and more coming with Uber Elevate, with Uber Lyft, with a high-speed rail project that will be connecting Houston to Dallas, which I'll mention here shortly on some economic impact numbers. That's a great project. But if you look at our roadways, our airport systems, we have a truly integrated transportation system of choice, and we have to keep it that way. The funds that all of you went out to vote for in Props 1 and 7 several years ago, we must make sure that those funds are dedicated to the projects in which you voted on at the ballot box. There's a lot of movement now to make sure that they are moved to the general fund. We do not want to see those funds diverted to the general fund. They need to be put back into maintenance and new construction projects so we can build more and more roadways, maintain our bridges, and truly have an integrated transportation system of choice for the entire state. Tollways are another important. I know not necessarily right here where we're sitting today, but throughout the entire region, tollways, managed lanes, express lanes are an integral part of that. How many here have toll tags? Okay, about half maybe. 28 million people in Texas, right? 28 million. 12 million. I just heard this the other night from Chairman Nichols. 12 million Texans have toll tags. I had no idea that almost half of our population have toll tags. So what does that tell us? That tells us that almost half of Texans want a choice, whether to travel on tollways or managed lanes or express lanes. So don't take that away. And what we're facing is a very vocal, small minority group of people here in the North Texas region and primarily in Harris County and Travis County who have the ear of the governor and the lieutenant governor, and they're saying no more tollways. And we simply have to have the choice. Are tollways the perfect answer? Absolutely not. But they're a piece of the puzzle of the overall integrated transportation system of choice. So give us a choice. If Texans, 12 million, want that choice, let's keep that choice as an alternative. Education, particularly as it relates to school finance. I've heard the speaker, Strauss, say that we cannot have true tax reform in this state unless we address the school finance formula. He's exactly right. I just heard the speaker-elect with Speaker Bonin say the same thing. We've heard 2 weeks ago, Comptroller Hager actually come out and say, until we address the school finance formula, we're not going to see true property tax reform. And we all want property tax reform. We all have high property taxes. But until we address the school finance formula, we're not going to see that. So obviously we have to keep our public schools healthy. We have to keep accountability standards high. But you've got great examples with Aledo and Weatherford ISDs that are great quality school districts. And we want to make sure that we grant them that local control and give them the dollars that are needed. We just lost the Amazon project. The number one reason why we lost the Amazon project was lack of an educated workforce ready to go today. Now today is 3 to 5 years, but for them today. And so that was the number one reason, is a lack of educated workforce. So why would we even want to have a discussion about pulling funds from local schools? So, but we obviously must address the school finance formula. It's got to be fair and equitable all across the entire state. Now, I will tell you, one way not to have property tax reform, is to have revenue caps. The three mayors in the room, revenue caps obviously is a big issue. The governor has a plan to date of 2.5% cap on revenue for cities, for counties, for community college districts. Cities, counties, community college districts, 2.5% cap. That is devastating for many of our cities, counties, and community college districts across the state. There are other ways to achieve property tax reform without capping the revenue, without tying the hands of our city, county, and community college district leadership, and not giving them the tools that they need to govern, to finance, to provide public safety, to provide disaster relief, whatever comes their way, we must have that local control. You look at all the rhetoric in the political landscape nationally. You look at it right here in Texas, in Austin. We're seeing it and hearing about it a lot now. Where do you have the most stable form of political government that is closest to the citizens that they serve? Right here locally. So the pro-local control has to prevail in the next session. I think it will, but we have a lot of work to do to make sure of that. We have a new speaker in Dennis Bonnen, who I'm not sure yet where he stands in terms of local control with revenue caps. That's yet to be determined, but he will govern with a structure in terms of keeping the House together and fair and equitable, and all sides across the aisle have an equitable type of say in terms of what goes on behalf of their constituents. So our home, our decisions that the Texas Municipal League is leading with, we are adopting that as well. And we're going to be helping Bennett Sandlin and team from TML right here in this region to make sure that pro-local control stays number one on our target list in terms of pieces of legislation. You're already seeing legislation filed as of yesterday, and you're seeing many of these issues already arise. Economic development, Chapter 312, that is the tool in which cities use to incentivize businesses to move to their city, to their county. States usually match those funds. Whether cities use them or not, whether you're fans, if you're on the side of we need those incentives because of the contractual relationship to bring new jobs that the Amazons of the world have, or whether if you're on the side of it's picking winners and losers and we don't need those, whatever side you're on, I'm asking to be right in the middle and giving those cities the tools that they need to do the business that the city council is elected to do. If they choose not to use those tools, that's okay. But let's don't take those tools away. We saw 2 state senators and 1 House member who were all champions of doing away with the Texas Economic Development Act. We saw them unseated in the midterm elections. Senator Burton, Senator Huffines, and Representative Rinaldi. And part of that was this anti-local control. We can do it better at the state than we can at the local level, right? Our state leadership tells the federal government, stay out of our business. We do it much bigger and better in Texas. Well, that's true. So locals can do it much bigger and better than what they can in Austin, is the way we feel. Business climate issues are also going to be on the radar like they were last session. Not only local regulatory ordinances. Luckily we don't have that issue in North Texas like you see in Austin and San Antonio, where you have a mandatory paid sick leave. That would be, obviously from a brand standpoint of a pro-business North Texas region, that would be really obviously bad for us. The Public Information Act, those of you who do business from the private sector, if you do business with a public entity, a city, county, school district, this particular piece of legislation that was filed last session, is being filed again this session, basically says that those trade secrets in your RFP could be exposed to the general public prior to the bid being let. That is not good for business. So we want to make sure that the Public Information Act is upheld, and it's for the public entities, not for the private entities doing business with a city or a county or a school district, for instance. And of course, unnecessary are pieces of legislation that are discriminatory toward all Texans. A bathroom bill or any type of expansion of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We think a bathroom bill will come back in the form of an expansion of RFRA. It will come back in the form of school safety package, which obviously we have to have school safety. Top priority. And the governor and the lieutenant governor have done an awesome job this interim in terms of school safety allocations. And then probably doing away with non-discrimination ordinances. Regardless of how you feel about that issue, we think it's unnecessary. And it's a distraction away from the core issues of public school finance, of transportation, of healthcare, etc. You have a list of our entire legislative priorities out on the table. Feel free to grab one of those. Also gave you a list of our 10 new House members throughout the entire 13 county region and 4 new senators. So we have 14 new state legislators representing this region more than any other region as far as change, turnover, than any other region around the entire state. So the House in the 86th session, the makeup will be 83 Republicans, 67 Democrats. It's changed a little. So I hope those on the extreme right will come more to the middle. I hope those on the extreme left will come more to the middle as well to work closer together. The makeup of the Senate will be 19 Republicans and 12 Democrats. So we have a lot of work to do, obviously, in the next session. Just a little bit in the couple minutes that I have left, we are pulling together and strategizing, like I said earlier, probably more than we ever have before, and we're calling it a regional chamber coalition. There are 93 chambers of commerce in the 13 counties in which we represent, 93, including this chamber right here. And nine of them have what I call formal government relations functions. They either have an in-house lobbyist or they spend money on an outside lobby firm. So all 93 have gotten together, Lisa included, and we voted on the top 10 issues facing the region. A lot of them that you saw today, and a few others, healthcare, mental health issues, region-wide issues. Of the 9, each have divided, and they have taken one issue. Of those 9 chambers, we at the commission have taken one issue as well. So we each have taken one of the 10 issues, and we'll become the issue expert on that particular issue for the next session. So we'll be doing white papers, we'll be calling on business leaders to come down and testify, giving you briefings and prepping you on your testimony, walking you through how to testify, etc. So the businesses are more engaged in the 86th session than they were in the 85th session. So we think this model is the exact same model that the Greater Houston Partnership uses in Harris County. It's so effective. They are working closer together. And so how will an East Parker County Chamber who may not have a formal GR function be engaged? Lisa obviously has a much better contact, or Chairman Talley or Sean or any of you in this room. If we need something from Senator Fallon or we need something from Representative King, you're the ones to call, not a registered lobbyist. We can call, but they're going to pick up your call and they're going to take your call at a much faster pace and give you a response much faster than somebody from the North Texas Commission or the other chambers. So we're going to be relying on all 93 chambers and stay in sync. And this, we're already seeing this working just in the last couple months of the interim session. I'm getting the hook, right? That's good. Let me just move on to the next slide briefly. A lot of this can be found on our website infrastructure. This is the economic impact that I mentioned. I wanted to be sure to show this slide of our bullet train. This is the high connection between Houston and Dallas, 2 of the largest employment centers, obviously, in our state. To connect those 2 regions within 90 minutes, it will employ a lot of people in rural Texas between the Dallas-Fort Worth area and in Houston as well. One more, if you will. I love this slide. Tom Luce, many of you know who Tom Luce is. He is chairing a Texas 2036 initiative. We've been working a lot with Mr. Luce on some of his data points. Texas will celebrate our bicentennial in 2036. And what their data is already showing from TEA, from the Higher Education Coordinating Board, 65% of jobs will require a certificate, 2 or 4-year degree by the year 2036. And where are we today? 20.9 in 2018. How many are familiar? I know Sean and others involved in the school systems with the 60 by 30 plan. The 60 by 30 plan. Basically, that plan says that by the year 2030, 60% of Texans between the ages of 25 and 34 will achieve a 2-year, 4-year, or a certificate. 60% by the year 2030. Anybody want to guess where we are today? 42%. So we're better on the 60 by 30 plan with a shorter time frame than obviously 20 by 36, but either one, we still have a long way to go to make sure that we are, as a state, providing the funds necessary to keep our school systems, our public school system strong, and those school systems are graduating and educating your future workers for the jobs that we require of tomorrow. Next slide, and one more. So we need you to engage in the political process. That's the message of the day, is you're probably sitting there saying, you know, it's a lot of information, but now what can I do? Is engage. Thank you for getting out to vote. It made a huge difference within our state. I think we're going to see a more balanced legislature, but we still have a lot of challenges. Please get out and vote. Follow us on social media. Join us at the North Texas Commission if you are willing to go down and testify, if you're willing to be engaged and to call upon our state senators and our state representatives to make sure that we keep Texas truly open for business. Thank you very much.